Imagine a prison where people don't want to escape. A society where control doesn't come from force, but from pleasure. Aldous Huxley showed this nearly a century ago in his book, Brave New World. He saw that the future wouldn't be made of chains and whips, but of endless entertainment and pleasures. The English writer understood something that few people realized at the time. Pleasure can be a more powerful weapon than pain. When people are busy having fun, they don't question anything. They don't fight. They don't protest. They don't think much about life. This is the story of how pleasure became the perfect method of control, and how we still live today inside this golden trap that Huxley described. Aldous Huxley discovered something frightening about power. Rulers no longer need to use force to control people. They can use something much more effective: constant pleasure. In Brave New World, Huxley showed a society where no one suffers, but no one really lives either. The secret lies in the anesthetization of the senses. When people are always busy with entertainment, they don't stop to think. Entertainment becomes a smokescreen that hides reality. TV series, games, parties. All of this can function like a drug that keeps the mind asleep. But here's the most clever trick. Huxley realized that pain always sparked revolts. When people suffered, they came together and fought for change. But pleasure does the opposite. It separates people, each in their own little world of personal entertainment. It's as if each person had their own golden cell, decorated with everything they like. The most impressive thing is that this control works because people choose it. No one forces anyone to watch television for hours or stay glued to their phone. People do this because it feels good, it's easy, it's comfortable. Pleasure becomes a voluntary prison where people lock themselves in. The diabolical genius of this system is that it doesn't seem bad. On the contrary, it seems wonderful. Who doesn't want to be happy all the time? Who doesn't want to avoid pain and discomfort? But Huxley showed that this artificial happiness is actually a form of living death. The person stops growing, stops questioning, stops being truly human. And so the world's biggest factory was born. Not a factory of cars or clothes, but a factory of fake happiness. Modern society became a giant machine for producing artificial emotions. Like a factory, it takes normal people and transforms them into consumers addicted to stimuli. This process happens so subtly that most people don't even realize they're being manipulated. Think about the last time you saw an advertisement. The system works by creating desires that didn't exist before. Advertisements show happy people using products, making everyone want to have the same happiness. But when the person buys the product, the happiness doesn't last long. Soon, another desire appears, another product, another promise of satisfaction. Of course, not everything that gives us pleasure is bad. Watching a movie occasionally or buying something we need aren't problems. The danger is when these activities become a constant escape from reality. When the person can no longer be alone with their thoughts, when they always need some external distraction, that's when pleasure has become prison. People's emotions become shallow because they never have to deal with real difficulties. It's like a muscle that isn't used. It gets weak. When the person only feels superficial pleasures, they lose the ability to feel deeper things like compassion, courage, or true love. This emotional superficiality makes people predictable. They always react the same way, seeking more pleasure when they're sad, more fun when they're bored. The system can easily control these people because it knows exactly what they'll do in each situation. Now get ready to meet Soma, the most dangerous drug that ever existed. In Huxley's book, there was a drug called Soma that solved any emotional problem. Were you sad? Take Soma. Were you anxious? Take Soma. It was the magic solution for everything. Today we don't have a pill called Soma, but we have many other things that play the same role. You've probably taken Soma today without realizing it. Social media functions as modern Soma. When the person feels lonely or insecure, they grab their phone and dive into the virtual world. There they find likes, comments, funny videos. For a few hours, the existential pain disappears. But as soon as they leave social media, the pain returns, sometimes even stronger. Pornography is another type of Soma. It offers instant pleasure without having to deal with the complications of a real relationship. The person doesn't need to know themselves, doesn't need to grow emotionally, doesn't need to face their fears. But this artificial pleasure leaves an even bigger emptiness afterward. Uncontrolled consumption also works like a drug. Buying new things gives a good temporary feeling. The person feels important, fulfilled, happy. But this happiness disappears quickly, and soon they need to buy something else to feel pleasure again. Even medications can become soma when they're used to escape from life. Of course, many people really need medicine for health problems. But when medicines are used just to avoid feeling sadness, anxiety, or any emotional discomfort, they become a way of escaping personal growth. All these modern somas have something in common. They promise to solve pain without the person needing to make any real effort to change. It's like putting a band-aid on an infected wound. The pain goes away for a while, but the problem remains there, often getting worse. But there's something even more sinister happening. There's a very thin line between wanting something and being a slave to that desire. Huxley showed how the constant promise of satisfaction transforms free people into voluntary slaves. They think they're choosing, but actually they're being chosen by their impulses. Étienne de la Boétie, an ancient French thinker, wrote about voluntary servitude. He said that people often choose to be slaves because it's easier than being free. Freedom takes work, requires responsibility, is sometimes uncomfortable. Slavery, on the other hand, offers security and comfort. See if this sounds familiar. Pleasure functions as an invisible chain. The person doesn't see they're trapped because the chain is made of pleasant things. It's like an addiction to chocolate. The person knows it's bad for them, but can't stop because it tastes so good. The difference is that addiction to pleasure in general is much more subtle and socially accepted. Emotional dependence happens when the person can no longer be alone with themselves. They always need some distraction, some external stimulus. Being in silence, doing nothing, becomes torture. The person has lost the ability to find peace and joy within themselves. The most dangerous thing is that this slavery looks like freedom. The person can do everything they want. Eat, drink, have sex, buy, have fun. But they can't not do these things. When pleasure becomes mandatory, it stops being pleasure and becomes prison. And here we arrive at a terrible paradox. Excess comfort can be as dangerous as lack of it. Huxley realized that when people have everything too easy, they stop fighting for important things. It's as if freedom were a muscle. If it's not exercised, it gets weak and can even die. Look around you. Political apathy is one of the symptoms of this anesthetized freedom. When people are busy with their personal pleasures, they're not interested in what happens in society. Politicians can do whatever they want because the people are distracted with entertainment. It's easier to complain about the government from the couch at home than to go out on the street to protest. Spiritual alienation is another serious problem. People stop asking life's big questions. Why am I here? What's the meaning of all this? How can I be a better person? These questions are uncomfortable, so it's easier to turn on the television and forget about them. Intellectual demobilization is perhaps the most dangerous. When the brain is always busy with superficial stimuli, it loses the ability to think deeply. It's like eating only fast food. It satisfies hunger, but doesn't really nourish. Thinking becomes shallow, incapable of making complex connections or questioning accepted ideas. But maybe you're wondering, is there a way out? And the answer might shock you. Huxley said something very profound. Truth is not always comfortable. Actually, truth is almost never comfortable. It requires the person to face things about themselves and about the world that they'd rather not see. That's why most people choose to live in illusion. Illusion is like a soft blanket that protects from the cold of reality. It's comfortable, warm, familiar. Truth is like leaving home on a cold morning, unpleasant at first, but necessary to get somewhere. The problem is that many people prefer to stay in bed forever. The dilemma between the real and the pleasurable happens every day in small and big decisions. It's more pleasurable to believe there are no problems in the world than to face difficult issues like poverty, injustice, or environmental destruction. It's more comfortable to think everything will work out by itself than to take responsibility for necessary changes. In personal life, it's also easier to pretend everything's fine than to admit problems in marriage, career, or mental health. Denial is a form of pleasure because it avoids the pain of confrontation. But this avoided pain doesn't disappear. It accumulates and can explode later in a much worse way. The choice between truth and pleasure is also an ethical choice. When the person chooses comfortable illusion, they're not just hurting themselves. They're contributing to a world where lies are more valued than honesty, where appearance matters more than essence. And this leads us to a disturbing discovery about our own bodies. The human body has always been seen as something sacred in many cultures. It was the temple of the soul, the vehicle for deep spiritual experiences. But in modern society, the body became an object of hedonistic worship. Instead of being a path to something greater, it became the final destination. This inversion of the sacred is very dangerous. When the body is treated only as a source of immediate satisfaction, it becomes a prison. The person gets trapped in their physical desires, unable to see beyond the needs of the moment. It's like living in a beautiful house, but never leaving it to explore the world outside. Jung, the famous psychologist, talked about how desires can be illusions of freedom. The person thinks they're free because they can do what they want with their body, but actually they've become a slave to their impulses. It's like a dog chasing its own tail. Lots of movement, but no real progress. Arthur Schopenhauer, the German philosopher, said that desire is a source of suffering. When the person wants something, they suffer because they don't have it. When they get what they want, they suffer because soon another desire appears. And when they lose what they had, they suffer again. It's an endless cycle of dissatisfaction. But there's something even more subtle happening: the murder of silence. The constant noise of modern life isn't just external. There's an internal noise that's even more disturbing: the mental chatter that never stops. People live with their heads full of thoughts, worries, plans, fantasies. And the worst part is that much of this mental noise is fed by the constant search for stimuli. When was the last time you were in complete silence? Interior silence is the place where the deepest transformations happen. It's in silence that the person can hear their true voice, the one that knows their real needs. But to reach this silence, you need to stop feeding the mind with constant stimuli. Mystics from all traditions have always associated silence with self-knowledge. They knew it's impossible to know yourself in the middle of mental confusion. It's like trying to see the bottom of a lake while someone is throwing stones in the water. Only when the water becomes still is it possible to see clearly. Philosophers also valued silence as a path to wisdom. Socrates said that an unexamined life is not worth living. But how can you reflect if your mind never stops? How can you think deeply if you're always consuming information and entertainment? Here's a simple practice. Start with just 5 minutes a day without any stimulus. No phone, no music, no television, no book. Just you and your thoughts. At first it will be uncomfortable, and that's exactly what makes the exercise valuable. This discomfort shows how much we depend on external distractions. And this leads us to the most concerning phenomenon of all: the transformation of adults into big children. One of Huxley's strongest criticisms was about the infantilization of society. He saw that adults were being treated like big children, incapable of making mature decisions or dealing with frustrations. This infantilization isn't accidental. It's a very effective control strategy. Look at the people around you. Children are easy to control because they seek immediate gratification and avoid any discomfort. If you give candy to a child every time they cry, they'll learn that crying is the way to get what they want. Modern society does the same thing with adults. It offers immediate satisfactions to prevent them from crying or rebelling. Friedrich Nietzsche talked about the last man, a pathetic creature who only wants security and comfort. This last man avoids any risk, any challenge, anything that might disturb their peace of mind. They prefer a small and safe life to a big and dangerous one. Infantilization manifests in the inability to tolerate frustrations. If the Wi-Fi takes time to connect, the person gets irritated. If they have to wait in line, they despair. If someone disagrees with them on social media, they get deeply offended. It's as if every small discomfort were a terrible tragedy. Infantilized adults don't question authority because they're too busy seeking immediate rewards. It's like giving a lollipop to a child to stop asking difficult questions. While people are distracted with their lollipops, entertainment, consumption, various pleasures, they don't notice what's happening around them. But wait, there's a path of resistance that can change everything. In the midst of all this manipulation through pleasure, there's a powerful form of resistance. Authentic spiritual seeking, not consumer spirituality, full of promises of easy happiness, but the true inner journey that requires courage and discipline. Real spirituality is revolutionary because it teaches that true satisfaction doesn't come from outside. When the person discovers this, they become very difficult to control. How do you convince someone to buy happiness if they've already found happiness within themselves? How do you manipulate someone with external pleasures if they've learned to find pleasure in simplicity? Jung talked about the process of individuation, which is the path to becoming who you really are. This process requires facing dark parts of yourself, questioning limiting beliefs, going through crises and transformations. It's not comfortable at all, but it's the only path to real inner freedom. Pain, emptiness, and doubt aren't enemies of spirituality. They're teachers. Pain teaches compassion. Emptiness teaches humility. Doubt teaches us to seek deeper answers. When the person stops running from these difficult experiences and learns from them, they develop a wisdom that no artificial pleasure can offer. But not all pleasure is an enemy. There's a surprising discovery here. Not all pleasure is manipulation. There's a fundamental difference between pleasure that liberates and pleasure that enslaves. Conscious pleasure arises from presence, from genuine connection, from appreciating the simple beauty of life. It doesn't create addiction because it doesn't promise to be more than it is. The pleasure of contemplating a sunset is different from the pleasure of watching television. The first connects the person with something greater than themselves. The second disconnects them from reality. The first leaves the person more awake. The second leaves them more asleep. The first nourishes the soul. The second only distracts the mind. The pleasure of authentic human bonds is also liberating. When two people truly connect, talking deeply, sharing vulnerabilities, creating together, a type of joy emerges that doesn't depend on external stimuli. It's a pleasure born from the human capacity to love and be loved. Artistic creation is another source of conscious pleasure. When the person writes, paints, dances, sings, or creates anything that comes from the heart, they experience very deep satisfaction. It's the pleasure of giving form to their feelings, of expressing their uniqueness, of contributing beauty to the world. And now we arrive at the moment of the most important choice of all. We've reached the most crucial point of this entire reflection. How do we escape this trap? How can an ordinary person free themselves from control through pleasure without becoming a monk isolated from the world? The answer isn't to reject all pleasure. That would be impossible and even harmful. The key is to develop awareness. Awareness is the ability to observe our own impulses before acting. It's creating a space between desire and action, where we can consciously choose what to do. Here are some concrete practices to develop this awareness. First, practice the conscious pause. Before picking up your phone, watching television, or buying something, stop for 10 seconds and ask, why am I doing this? Am I running away from some feeling? This simple question can break the automatism that makes us slaves to impulses. Second, establish regular pleasure fasts. Once a week, choose to go without some habitual source of pleasure. Social media, music, series, sweets. This shows how much we depend on these things and strengthens our capacity for choice. It's like exercising a muscle. The more we practice, the stronger it gets. Third, cultivate pleasures that require presence. Walking in nature, talking deeply with friends, reading books that challenge your thinking, learning something new. These pleasures nourish instead of draining energy, connect instead of isolating, expand instead of diminishing. Fourth, learn to relate to discomfort differently. Instead of immediately running from sadness, anxiety, or boredom, try observing these feelings with curiosity. What are they trying to teach you? What unmet need do they reveal? Often, our discomforts are portals to self-knowledge and growth. The path of real freedom requires going through the comfort that paralyzes us. It's like leaving a heated pool to dive into the open sea. At first, it's scary and uncomfortable, but then comes the incredible feeling of being truly alive, of being in contact with forces greater than ourselves. Huxley left us a warning and an invitation. The warning: beware of pleasures that promise to solve everything without demanding anything in return. The invitation: have the courage to seek an authentic life, even if it's more challenging than artificial life. Because in the end, one real and difficult life is worth more than 1,000 fake and easy lives. The choice is ours. Continue sleeping in the comfort of illusion, or wake up to the challenging adventure of being truly human. You can start today with a simple question before seeking your next pleasure. Does this free me or trap me? The honest answer to this question can be the first step toward your true freedom.